Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. I'm going to talk to you, it might seem like it's about politics here, but it's not really. It's about actually morality. No, it's not. It's about arguing. It's about the difference between a right and being right to do something. There's been this rumbling, ongoing issue between Elon Musk and the entirety of Britain, or at least, the political infrastructures of Britain. And he's been trawling up these issues of grooming gangs in the UK, which have been an issue. There have been inquiries. We know about all of these things. Thank you. We have been living here for the last 25 years or plus, that these things have been going on for. Elon Musk has now come along and he is getting his oar stuck in and trying to generate division and support the downfall of a democratically elected government that he doesn't seem to like. And he's using these grooming gangs. Now, what he's done is talked about a chap called Tommy Robinson, who is a right-wing, far right-wing activist who is in prison for contempt of court that he pleaded guilty to. It's not like, people are complaining, oh, he didn't even have a jury. No, you don't have a jury when you plead guilty to something. He said, I am guilty of this thing, and then went to prison as a result of it. And yet, Musk is calling for him to be released, and as if that's really unfair. He literally pleaded guilty to it. Anyway, so Musk is calling for this guy to be released, and he's also been... I'm just giving you the foundation so you understand what the context is before we talk about actually stuff that isn't necessary connected to this. But you have this party in the UK, the Reform UK party, that's run by Nigel Farage. It was originally run by a chap called Richard Tice, who we're going to listen to in a second. And then Nigel Farage came back on the scene and took over the helm, really, and steered the party to 5 MPs in the House of Parliament. They have distanced themselves from Tommy Robinson, this far-right activist, because he's too divisive and he's been in trouble with the law lots and lots. As well, Elon Musk has come along and said, I'm going to give £100 million to Nigel Farage and the Reform UK party because they are the future for the UK. So he's trying to engender this whole movement of right-wing populism across the world. He's endorsed and advocated for AfD in Germany. He's going to interview Alice Weidel, the AfD leader, and he is also endorsing Reform UK, and he's advocated for people like the neo-Nazi connected in Belgium, connected to, I think, Valence Belang, and so on and so forth. So that's where he's sitting. Now, Nigel Farage has come out and said, no, Tommy Robinson's still too much for us, we stay away from him. Then, because Elon Musk has been advocating for the release of Tommy Robinson, he's then had a pop at Nigel Farage, who just met him on 17th of December to talk about giving him £100 million. And he's now said, oh, Nigel Farage is not fit to lead reform. They need someone else. Okay, so that's the context of Richard Tice, who was a former leader and is one of the main Reform UK guys and politician on LBC with Lewis Goodall. And at the same time, Elon Musk has called a serving politician who's a politician for safeguarding and worked tirelessly for women's rights and etc., Jess Phillips of the Labour Party. Elon Musk has called her a rape genocide apologist. We don't really know what that even means, but it's pretty horrendous no matter what. And he said a lot of other really contemptuous things to do with Gordon Brown, and who's a previous Prime Minister, and Keir Starmer being complicit in these crimes. I don't want to get into the long weeds of these claims themselves, but that's what they're talking about here.
Your leader, Nigel Farage, praised Elon Musk a few days ago as an absolute hero figure, very helpful to our cause. Given that this is a man who has described a UK government minister entirely wrongly, and many would say outrageously, and even dangerously, as being a rape genocide apologist, and who has praised Tommy Robinson as being a political prisoner, would Nigel Farage and yourself, would you reappraise those comments now?
Look, in other words, are those comments wrong? Would you give them a reevaluation? What's your view on them? And what you're going to see from this part and the next part I'm going to show you is a perfect example of how not to answer a question and how to conflate two completely different things.
Mr. Musk is an advocate of free speech. That's why he owns the X platform. He's one of the most successful entrepreneurs in this country.
Even when he makes gratuitous comments
he's got every right to be involved in politics in this country because he employs thousands of people here, paying hundreds of millions of tax, and he recognises that it's only Reform UK, frankly, that can make Britain grow again.
So the question was, would you reevaluate what he said? In other words, is what he said good or bad? Tice is already starting to talk about the right to say something rather than whether something is right or wrong. Goodall is saying, is this right? Is this morally right? Should he have said that? Should you reappraise your evaluation of what he said? Tice then goes, he's got the right to say these things. That's not what, yeah, okay, whatever. He pays taxes in the UK. He employs British people. Therefore, he can stick his oar in UK politics and he can say what he likes.
So, my position with regard to Mr. Yaxley Lennon, I've stated on numerous occasions, as has Nigel, he's a convicted criminal. He's in jail. He's nothing to do with us and never will be. It is as clear and as simple as that. We're a serious political party looking to win the next general election and to run this country with root and branch reform to get things properly organised and properly governed again.
Would you say?
And then Lewis Goodall, they go around and roundabout for some time, and then he comes back with a rejoinder here, like at the end. And this is the key part that really irritated me, and it irritated me so much I thought I'd talk to you about it.
Okay. Just going back on that one question around what Mr. Musk said about Jess Phillips, would you condemn what he said, though? I mean, you would say you would accept that was completely wrong when he said that she was a rape genocide apologist.
In other words, is this wrong? Was he wrong to say that, and actually is this wrong, as in not correct? Was it wrong for him to say that? That's all you need to answer.
We live in a world of free speech. Mr. Musk is entitled to say what he wants.
Sure, and you would agree that it's wrong.
We all might use different language. I will use my language. Mr. Musk will use his, and other people will use theirs.
But you'd agree it's factually wrong.
I want to know why Jess Phillips is rejecting a national inquiry.
But would you agree that it's factually wrong?
So this is classic sort of diversion. Like, I want to answer your question with things that I want to talk about. I am going to refuse to answer your question. You've asked me whether this is wrong, and I'm going to say what I want Jess Phillips to say is this. No. Was what Elon Musk said about Jess Phillips, is that wrong? Yeah, but I want Jess Phillips to say, no. Stop. And then he says, was it right for him to say that? He has the right to say it. We're not talking about that. I mean, you're talking about that because you're answering the question incorrectly. So either you're a bit ignorant of how this works or you're being thoroughly disingenuous.
That she is not a rape genocide apologist.
Look, I don't know what Jess
You won't even
is.
say
I don't know
that.
why she's rejected this inquiry.
What is rape genocide? What is a rape genocide apologist? What is it? You won't say that it's wrong. You won't say that Jess Phillips is not a rape genocide apologist.
What I will say is, why is Jess Phillips rejecting a national inquiry? It's as simple as that.
You could say that, but you could still say that she's not a rape genocide apologist, that Mr. Musk is wrong. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, Mr. Tice.
No, they aren't. But I'm telling you what I want to say, which is that...
And that says it all. No, they aren't. But I'm telling you what I want to say. Here's an example. Here's an opportunity for me to tell you what I want to say. You're going to give me a platform to say what I want to say, and I'm going to disguise this as an interview. But I'm not going to answer your questions, and I am going to say what I want to say. I'm not going to answer your question. And this is where I, as an interviewer here, and I think Lewis Goodall does a pretty good job here, but I wouldn't have let Tice go until he just got off the air on his own accord. But I wouldn't have gone to adverts, I wouldn't have gone to anything else. I would not have let him go until he answered that question. I will not let you go until you tell me whether what he said was right or wrong. And if you say it's right, you are morally bankrupt. That's the extension here. But if you're going to call someone a rape genocide apologist who's been working tirelessly for safeguarding for women for as long as she has, then and either you believe that or that is wrong, and you need to answer that. And it is I think really disingenuous that Tice doesn't do so. But Goodall does have some good points to make, as you'll hear.
She should allow a national inquiry. That is the key point.
Do you not think that's rather extremist language, rather toxic language?
But you seem rather offended by language. We live in a world, the right to
I'm sure there are some things that could be said that offend you.
The right to a friend. I will use my language. Other people will use theirs.
So he could say whatever he liked. And
I want...
The point, he's gone what I'd call nuclear here. He's like, well, it's language. You're getting offended by language. So, okay, if that's what you're doing, if that's what you're saying, we can say anything we like to anyone at any point in time ever. We can have at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on national television, people swearing, saying disgusting things. We can have pornography. We can, we have the rights to do all these things at different times. You're saying we can do that. We can say that. We can have these kind of freedoms all of the time, and we should be able to exercise them whenever we want. And we can't be offended by words. You can't be offended by words. I'd love Lewis Goodall to have turned to Richard Tice here and just sworn at him, called him the very worst thing, said the thing that hurt Richard Tice the most there, and said, it's just words. It's just my words. I'm not offended by them. If you're offended by them, it's your problem. Sorry, Richard Tice. I'm going to slag off your wife. I'm going to slag off your daughter. Oh, they're just words. Don't worry. I'm going to call your wife this. Would you accept that, Richard Tice? Would you accept that? No, you wouldn't. So this is hugely... problematic in my books. This is a massive double standard, and I think Richard Tice should have had his feet hauled over the hot coals until he gave an answer.
You seem more worried about a bit of language than actually the requirement to expose the full facts of what actually happened. The
full facts. So, is that a full fact? Is she a rape genocide apologist? If it's not full facts, if that's factually incorrect, then it's not just morally dubious to say something like that, but it's factually incorrect. Tice is just he's smashing all sorts of things together here in an attempt to get out of answering what should be a pretty standard answer. Answering a question that has a pretty standard answer. Like, yeah, that was pretty horrible.
In this situation, across dozens of towns and thousands of children in this country. That's the real story. You seem rather reticent to want to analyse it and expose what really happened.
Of course, that's not true because he's talked a lot about it, and etc., etc. But that excerpt stops there. But that's a classic attempt at diversion at the end there, and the interview was a classic example of not answering difficult questions. And I would be a bit like Mehdi Hassan. I like Mehdi Hassan's interviewing technique, which is you don't let it go. He's like a dog with a bone. I ain't letting that go. And we will not move on from this point until you have answered that question. And if you refuse to answer that question, then we're just going to sit here on that question until the end of the interview, and you can then sort off and go home and be seen to be someone who cannot answer basic questions. But the idea here for me is about the difference between something being right and having the right. I have the right to go and defecate on my front lawn in front of my neighbours. Is it right for me to do that? No, I don't think it is. It's offensive. And so I would advise against doing that. It is wrong for me to do that, even though I have the right to do it. Conflating the right to do something with it being right. And this is a whole freedom of speech thing we hear all the time. It's like, yeah, but freedom of speech, you've got the right to say those things. Yeah. But with rights come responsibilities. And you have a responsibility if you say these things say that thing to that person at this time and at that place. You have a responsibility as a decent citizen to, be respectful and trying to engender respect. And I would argue, although, that requires a lot more philosophizing, but it does, because you have the right to say and do these things. You should not be encouraged to say and do those things willy-nilly. And we have the right to call you out on saying those things, or call anyone out on saying things that are factually incorrect and deeply offensive. It's that double standard of people who call for free speech absolutism, but understand that they would never say certain things to their children, to their parents, to their there's a time and a place to say certain things, and they would say that actually, if a child stands up in class and racially insults a teacher for 2 hours in a long invective, and disturbs the rest of the class, that there should be some kind of regulation against that. That actually that child should get detention for being, behaving egregiously, right? We'd accept that. Most people would be like, yeah, that child needs detention. We don't go, well, free speech. I've got free speech. I can say that. Fire in a theatre. I've got a bomb on an aeroplane. No, that's not acceptable. So, there are times and places and contexts and scenarios where we're like, no, you can't say those things, or you shouldn't say those things, or, etc., etc. And also, what you've said, but that is also a slightly different question from whether what you've said is right. So for that child, or an adult even, standing up and racially abusing someone needlessly with horrific invective, we should be able to say, that's wrong. That's wrong for you to say that. That's offensive. They find it offensive. I find it offensive. Actually, there's a general consensus that that is offensive. And therefore, it was wrong for you to say that, even though you have the right. Well, we can talk about hate crime and maybe not having the right to say that, but someone with free speech would say he does have the right. And of course, this is where we get into discussions of what rights are, and the ontology of rights and the hierarchy of rights. And of course, they're constructed by the mind. So rights don't really exist objectively. We construct them, and some rights might well come into tension with other rights, and you're trying to work out which right supersedes the other one. The right not to be offended, the right not to be delivered hate speech by someone, or does the right to say to freedom of speech trump everything? And so these are tangled webs we weave when we construct societies and norms and moral and legal frameworks, and they aren't always perfect. In fact, they're never perfect, generally speaking. There are always issues or particular examples that don't quite fit to how we understand how the world should work, and so we have an awful lot of rules of thumb, and then we go, well, that's a bit of an exception there, but we muddle through our lives and society and history, and hopefully get to kind of better places. And that's the difficulty of rights, is that they are conceptual, abstract ideas. So yeah, we can have those discussions of rights, but I'm fairly sure that when asked about whether something is right or wrong, we should be answering in terms of a moral evaluation, or a pragmatic even evaluation, not whether there is a right there to do something. I just thought I'd have that little whinge. Take care. I'll speak soon. Bye.